Folks, welcome to another Watch Your Story, another great guest, Clobbering Times. I mean, I know so many of you guys know him. It's going to be awesome to talk about stuff going on with him. Brother, I can't believe it. Thank you so much for finally coming in and hanging out with me. It's just going to be a blast. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the invite. I'm very honored by it. I'm not worthy of it, but I'm certainly honored by it. And again, sorry I was a little bit late, but I'm glad to be here, and we will hang as long as we can. And after that, again, of course.
Well, no problem. Listen, we record everything. It drops on Sunday morning, so it's just there first thing for everyone to get up to. We'll get there, but before we get too far into it, though, I want to talk about like your YouTube journey. Like, how did you transition into, hey, man, I'm just going to talk comic books on YouTube?
Well, for the first, let's see, since around 2009, I started on a format called Blog Talk Radio, which not too many people know about, but it was one of the early. It was a sort of a podcast thingy where you would broadcast a couple of hours live,
Yep.
and it was for free. Then they later started charging for it, and so I had a show on there called Clobbering Time, and for 11 years and 700 episodes exactly. And my son, for a couple of years, had been trying to talk me into moving to YouTube. How it's so much better. You can live stream there, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm old and very, very stubborn about things, not very technical minded at all. In fact, the troglodyte. But so eventually, finally started seeing all. I became friends with our buddy Doomcock, who came on my show over at Blog Talk Radio, and I started going on his show once in a while. And I said, you know what? A lot of other people are saying you should go to YouTube, so I finally did. This has been three years ago to this month, I believe.
Wow, congratulations.
And this past Monday night, in fact, I did my 600th YouTube show, my 1300th show overall.
Yeah, congratulations. I saw that pop up. 600 shows. That's amazing. It's incredible. So
all streams.
So before we get too far into that, when do you stream? So everybody will know what date and time do you pretty much stream every week?
There's not a day that I'm not streaming, but as far as my own channel, my own shows.
Correct. Yeah.
On Monday nights, I do what we call Monday Night Mark C Comics Talk. All of the starting times are 9 p.m. Central, so 10 Eastern. And they are Monday Night Mark C Comics Talk. And then on Wednesday nights, I do Wild Card Wednesday Night, which could be just me goofing off with the audience, or once in a while I might put in a topic in there. Thursday nights are Clobby's Clubhouse, where I have a show with my wonderful friends, Raquel Briggs and Mark D with a C, just very great friends that I've made here since I've been on YouTube, by the way, for the past 3 years. And then, of course, Saturday night is my Saturday night Star Trek show, in which Raquel and I are reviewing all of real Star Trek, 66 through 05, the only real deal, the only one that matters, everything else with the Star Trek label is not Star Trek. So reviewing every episode of all the series, which is going to take some time, as you can imagine. This week we're getting almost to the end of our review of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. After that, we'll go to Voyager and Enterprise. So we've done it all so far, and we're going to do them all.
You mentioned friends and stuff like that. Is that probably the one thing that you've gotten the most out of doing the YouTube and hanging out and building shows and that kind of thing? Is just the friendships and the...
Absolutely. I have made some terrific friends here. I mean, when I first came on here and I had like 3 or 4, I had like almost no subs. And I met my good buddy Paulie at Latino Slant, and met our buddy. I think we have a mutual friend in Loki.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You do a weekly Wednesday night comic book talk with him as well, the round table.
And you do a show, right?
Yeah, we do a Tuesday Talk Hard. Your show is late. Your show is 10 Eastern time. I work like at 4 a.m. Eastern time. So I usually catch pieces of your shows like in spurts after the fact. But yeah, I've been following Clobbering Time since the very get. Well, comic books, bro. How can I not be reading comic book stuff, man?
Of course, man. Of course. And Loki's a good dude, and he's another one. And then made many other great friends, like Mexican Iron Man. And of course, I'd always been buddies with Doomcock, Gary at Nerd Roddick. And then of course Raquel came on with me fairly early, and we started doing Star Trek shows together. And the great Mark D with a C, who was just an extraordinary, just one of my best buds now. We're on together a few times a week. Even he'll come on and hang with me on my show, and then we'll after hours in the after the backstage hang out till late hours, hanging out and having fun. I've made some fantastic friends here, and that's the name of the game. Hanging with your buddies, geeking out about the stuff you love.
Isn't it just so much fun to get to do that? I mean, because you're an OG like me, man. I mean, I don't know if we're exactly the same age or pretty close. I'm actually turning 53 on Saturday. Well, by the time people see this, I would have already turned 53. Sorry, this is actually going to come out after my birthday, so we're recording it before my birthday. So
happy birthday! I'll be 59 in August.
So, okay, so we're 6 years. 6 years. All right, so five and a half years, 6 years. Okay.
You're a young man.
So. Yeah, I know. Well, thank you, Clobby. I'll take that all the way to the bank. Let my wife know when I give her a hug. Let her know.
Yes.
Clobby says I'm a young man, so she'll be like, "Yeah, he's fooled," and that's what she'll say to you.
Old pile of orange rocks myself. So.
Yeah. Isn't it really cool that we can just be OG nerds and we don't have to worry about trying to find the one or two people that live in our town, or you showed up at the comic shop with the person that you kind of get along with is like they came in early that day or they had to work that day. It's like, no, we can just come on here and just chit chat, right? It's so cool.
It's amazing. Well, once a month, myself and a bunch of friends for the past 10 or so years, we get together and go out to eat at a place and hang out and geek out and stuff, just so we can still keep in touch with in the real world out there with the geeks. But I gotta tell you, there's nothing like in the virtual world because it connects you to people that you would otherwise never meet. You're all over I don't even know where you are. You know where I am. But we're all over the world, and we would never bump into each other unless we lived close and we're at the same, at the comic shop.
Yeah, right.
So this allows you to have a great meeting of the minds, of the geek minds, as I say.
Yeah, it would back in the day for us, it would be the kind of thing where maybe you would go to a big convention or something, like maybe. Sure. But even then, I'm in Florida. So I don't remember going. I mean, once I got into like press work, like the last 20 something years, I started doing like a lot more press work. And I have gone to like San Diego. I've done the Comic-Con thing, but you've seen those things, man. It's a madhouse. The idea that I'm going to pick you out of that crowd and we're going to like hang out and become friends like we can doing this is completely crazy. So
no comic shops. Look, I made all of my greatest friends at comic shops or other types of geek venues. Couple of like fan club meetings. I'm talking way back in the 80s, and that I'm still friends, with this day, because you meet, your kindred spirits is where you meet at those places. But yes, you're right. I mean, you just at a con. I've met a couple of friends that have stayed good friends with at cons. My good retro blasting buddies, for example, I used to go to Dragon Con all the time. That's where I met them. But for the most part, yes, it's comic shops. It's more intimate surroundings.
Yeah. What is the beginning? What is like the first comic book? How did it start as a kid?
Well, for me, it starts when I was actually less than 2 years old with the Adam West Batman TV series, which was just debuted actually on the network television. And I'm told that because of that show and that catchy lyric of the opening theme, that the first word I could utter was Batman. And I was running around singing Batman. My parents like to tell me that. And Adam West was my first love as a geek. I always tell everybody, my gateway drug to geekness wasn't comic books, because when you're that young, you're not out buying comic books. You right. So it was the Adam West Batman TV show, the Filmation 60s Superman cartoon, the Fantastic Four cartoon by Hanna-Barbera, the Spider-Man cartoon by the Gantry Lance folks, and then Marvel Superheroes, Super Friends, Batman cartoons. And then eventually I was given comics at younger ages, and that's what started. So my gateway drug was, of course, as far as science fiction, it was Lost in Space. That as well, but it was comic books, it was TV, which, and by the way, a lot of people from my generation started with TV. I mean, you see comics when you're old enough to actually get them, but when you're very, very young, you get stuck in front of the TV and boom. So.
Yeah, I agree. I was already well aware of all of these different, cartoons and like Adam West. My mom watched Star Trek every evening. It was already on syndication as a kid. I remember growing up, and it was part of the evening thing. Like before dinner, this is what was coming on. She was watching that, then we would eat afterwards. Like that was just part of my upbringing. And I learned to read out of a comic book. That was actually, so I was like, I remember climbing on my I have a very vivid image of it. Of just being in his lap and pointing. I would learn sound effects. What is this? It's not really a word. It's a sound effect. Those kinds of things. What is one of the things that you could kind of like tell people of why you connected so much to comics and that type of fandom at that young age?
Well, it's interesting. Is basically building upon what you just said about learning to read with comics, I grew up. I was in special ed classes. Remember, this is Louisiana of the 1960s and 70s. Terrible education system. Not that it's any good now, but I'm actually probably better back then when you think about it. But anyway, they basically, if you weren't really one that could cut it in the regular classes, if you had learning disabilities, which I did, you just got shoved in these little LD or special ed classes and kind of just, so you didn't mess up the other kids. And I could barely read or write my name until I was, I don't know, 7, 8 years old. But we used to get these things called power records. And power records it was basically it's a comic book, but it's reprinted from certain Marvel comics and some DCs, where and it comes with a little bitty 45. For those who know what a 45 is,
I'm sure you do. I had one over there. I didn't think I'd get it, but yeah, it's a little record.
It's a little record with a little radio like type show thingy where you hear the voice actors of reenacting that comic book. And I became obsessed with those things. We got 3 or 4 or 5 of them. I got all the Marvel ones. Fantastic Four, of course, being the biggest. Hulk, Captain America, Spidey, and so forth. And I would listen to those things and memorize them over and over. I could quote them backwards and forwards, and it just seemed to me that those words on the page, which I could barely really make out before and years ago trying to read certain things, just jumped off the page at me. I get like, well, this is what they're saying. It made sense. So I eventually was able to teach myself how to read by reading those over and over again, and then seeing comic books and just, matching the words up. It was a bit of a process, but I wasn't really interested in reading anything else at that point. I became a big reader later, but early on, it was just the comic books. So it was comic books that inspired me to want to learn how to read and become a big-time reader later. And so I owe them that, as many other things I owe them.
Isn't it? I mean, wow. We just grew up into this heyday of everything from the the late 60s through, I'd say, the early 90s.
Oh yeah.
It's just everything exploded into these fandoms and IPs and entertainment, and television was birthed on the back of black and white television into westerns and different comedies and sitcoms and stuff like that. Yet behind the scenes, all this other science fiction and imagination and pop culture sort of formed, and now we're these two old guys who are just just in our sweet spot. I mean, it's just it just makes me so happy. I told my son the other day, he was asking about, Dad, what are you doing to relax? I said, are you kidding me? This YouTube thing, I've read 100 comic books probably in 3 months. I'm talking about movies, I'm talking about TV shows. I says, are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. I think it's sometimes you're like, could you tell yourself 20 years ago, CLOBBY, that you would have 4 streams a week and guesting on other shows all week to talk about all this nerd stuff with people?
It just happened for me. It's the best. That's what I love to do. So I'm with you. Obviously I'm a big conversationalist. I'm not a shocker, but talking the geekness. It's the stuff I love to talk the most. The only thing I have outside of geekness that I love to talk about is NFL history, because I hate the NFL has been destroyed for me. Other than that, I don't have any sports. A lot of my geek friends go, "Oh no, don't talk sports ball," and I won't, because a lot of them hate that. But other than that, and I've lost my love for that what's happened to the NFL. I don't have sports like some people do, or any other interests. I used to be a big time political junkie. That's you get old and you get kind of sick of that.
Yeah, you get cynical, don't you? Yeah, we're going to save a sports ball segment for the end then, just to antagonize the nerds, because it's a little sports. By the way, for those of you at home that don't know why we call it that, it's because the nerds don't like sports, so we jokingly call it sports.
A lot
ball.
don't. So, a lot of them don't. Yeah. I mean, some do, but no.
Oh yeah, there's overlap, and usually it's a fan of a certain team or something like that. But
right. And I just love NFL history. Other than that, that's the only thing I geek out about. But yes. It's
all that old sports, man. Old sports. We'll get to that. Let's do a sports segment at the end. We'll do a little snippet. Maybe we'll do like a members clip then. Let's do that. Let's do like a members clip. That'll be cool. So yeah, you kind of move through this phase where you're learning to read. You're exposed to obviously the television shows and the records and comics and things like that.
Yes.
Is it just something that just always continued at that point? Like it just never left you? It's become who you were going through school and growing up a little bit? Or is it something you kind of left and kind of went back to, or kind of what was your evolution through some of that?
Well, I'll tell you, you will meet a lot of people down the road, that will tell you similar to what you were just speaking about. Well, oh yeah, I used to buy comics and I got fell out of it for a while. Now I'm back. That's a common
that was
theme with a
me.
lot of
That was
people.
me. Totally me.
I'm a mutant. It never left me. I mean, obviously, it left me later as far as how modern comics. I was chased away in 2011 by the Screw 52, but that's different. As far as my early life, it never left me. And then I went in the very early age, went into the business, so the retail comic book business.
Right.
And had some of the greatest adventures of my life running comic shops and even owning one.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Started the first one down here in the 80s, down here in Louisiana, and ran that one for a good number of years. And like it was, what a time it was too, because this was in the early 80s when, man, comics, it was a renaissance for the independent market. Marvel and DC were really getting the big fire lit up under their arses by being threatened by a lot of the up and coming independent companies that were really doing really out there innovative stuff. So DC was really getting challenged by a lot of stuff and doing some extraordinary works, the Miller and the Moore stuff, and so much stuff, Watchmen and Dark Knight and different things. Miller's Daredevil and it was X-Men, Teen Titans, all kind of great stuff. The 80s was a true renaissance for comics, the art form of comic books, which it is an art form. Even though I'm a Bronze Age baby, I grew up in the Silver Age. Kirby's greatest work was all the Silver Age, but I grew up when I'm riding my bicycle to the stand to get my comics off the news rack, or off the spinner rack at the 7-Eleven or what have you. That was the Bronze Age, which for those who don't know, that's 1970 when Kirby left Marvel. He took the Silver Age with him. It became the Bronze Age, and that's until the mid or to late 1980s. And that's my favorite era, personally.
Yeah, it's I have a sweet spot where I had it when I was young, as a kid, like yourself. Learned to read, had them. I only have one that survived, by the way. It's over here on the shelf. I have no cover on it. It's the only one that survived. And then just as a young adult, just school, I was into sports. College was overwhelming, and then in college it was. And I've said this multiple times, so I don't want to unearth it, but just so you know, Batman '89 changed the game for me. Batman '89 made me look at it different. I had a close friend. He had a couple graphic novels. His brother had some others. In like a weekend, I'd read like 6 or 7 of these things, and went to like a bookstore, bought 6 or 7 more, and it was just like a gateway drug. It was like, oh my gosh, this is like so cool. And then, and of course, that's the boom, right? So you got the lead up to that, and then what happens after that, which it becomes basically a phenomenon for several years. And like yourself, got the bug. I did like a flea market booth because I was in college at the time. Mm-hmm. So my college, I didn't really have the money to do like an actual store with rent and the whole thing. I did like rented a flea market booth and had like comics and cards, and that was the way I could get stuff, right? So I could buy stuff at bulk. And I could read what I wanted and keep selling, keep it moving it through. So, is there a moment though where you're like, how do you identify? Is there a point you can kind of like, so this is just who I am? How do you kind of put your finger on that part? That's a little weird, I think, sometimes, is to let people understand it's just part of who we are.
It really is. Like you said, you mentioned Batman '89. That was when I had my comic shop. So that was at times. That's for another like 5 shows with those. Was like,
everything changed.
Yeah, my geekness. I mean, I guess maybe it's bad to say it defines me, but it really kind of does. I wear it. I mean, like I said, my dear friend Raquel, who my wonderful, lovely first officer who does the show with me, she's an academic and a scholar, and she's done the scholarly work that differentiates nerds and geeks. I try to tell her, I hear you, but everyone just mixes the two. She considers herself a nerd and not a geek. She likes to make the distinction. I never say I'm a nerd, but some people do. I'm a geek because nerds are actually smart. I'm a dumbass with no education. So
I didn't know that was a defining. I thought it was more like nerdy is like us, like comic books, movies, and TVs, and geek was more like computer nerds. I didn't know that's what that meant. So
she's given I mean, she has given dissertations on my show about it, dude. I'm telling you, like when on my Global Geek Gang show a couple years ago, and because no one else, I try to tell her, look, Big Bang Theory and all that other kind of stuff has changed the meaning of the word. Yeah, it's changed the meaning of the word in geek. Yeah. So I've always said geek as a again, it's not like an insult. I mean, it's like a badge of honor. It's like it's a because you should be able to poke fun at yourself, right? So I always say geek I mean in a tongue-in-cheek way, but she's defined it as nerds or academics and scholars and bookworms and all that stuff, where geeks have this crazy encyclopedic knowledge of all the, the fantasy science fiction and stuff that they love. And she's really good at giving the definition. But I try to tell her, look, I understand you, but people just say nerd to say it. They don't really.
Yeah, I think there's a quotient then. Maybe I'm 70% nerd and 30% geek. Maybe that's.
And people have percentages. Yes.
Maybe that's the best way to explain that then, because based on those, and I'm not opposed to those definitions. That's not horrible. That's not horrible. I'm with you there. I tease her
about it. She's just pedantic, and we call her the word police. But so it's not a big deal. Geek, nerd, they're fine to me, but as long as you don't tell her I. If you're hearing this, Raquel, you made me say this. No, I'm just kidding. About the geek stuff. I'm teasing her about the nerd geek stuff. So, but no, it defines me though. My geekness, it does. I mean, look, I gotta admit, I walk around with geek shirts all the time, everywhere out, and I wear them all over the place, and people will see a shirt. They go, "Oh man, cool shirt!"
Oh, yeah.
And I made a friend because I'll stop and I made a friend, right? And it's what I mostly talk about in life now, obviously, because I do the channel. Obviously, it's not everything, and it should never be anyone's whole life. I understand that. But it does bring, you're supposed to pursue happiness in life as much as you can. My kids are grown up. I'm not with anyone right now. So you fill up time the best you can. You enjoy your life the best you can. And even though I don't like what's happened to all my wonderful geek stuff that I love over the past 10, 15 years, I still have the old stuff to enjoy. And that's why I do this show. When it stops being fun doing this show, when it stops being fun talking about this stuff, I'll be out of here. I won't be doing it.
Well, you come find me. We'll find something that brings us joy again. That's how I end up down the rabbit hole, doing so many different shows and different little, and you probably did the same thing, right? You had certain things bring you happiness and joy, and just you evolve into a way to kind of dip your toe in that. And once I kind of really identified my ADD and kind of plugged it into this, I'm like, oh, that's what I really need to do. And that's how I carved it up. So that's why I do Saturday morning cartoons, and I do throwback movies and whatever. Nice. And I'm like, this isn't about chasing views or trying to get more money out of an algorithm or whatever. I don't have any control of any of that nonsense. I just want to have a good time. Like okay. And if it just keeps leveling up and I can pay for a better computer or whatever, then that's amazing. So I wish I had a better setup, because you'd be able to see. People don't notice because I don't have a great enough setup. I like that shirt
though.
Oh yeah, Godzilla. I have a different shirt. I mean, I have like so many different. And during the holidays, I have like a different Christmas shirt every day to work. I totally ignore the dress code. I'm totally with you on that. And you'll get one that's just a little bit off, and it'll garner attention from your other nerds or geeks picking on your population, and they'll be like, they give you the nod. Like I have, my wife got me Inconceivable. And it says Inconceivable, and in fine print it says doesn't mean what you think it means, and it has all these other things. And she and just everywhere we go, people you'll know your own people because they'll go, oh, I got you. I see what you did.
Inconceivable.
Absolutely.
You keep using that
Absolutely.
I think it means what you think it
doesn't
means.
Mean what you think it means. Yes, exactly.
Well, we play that clip, but Mark and I play that clip on the show all the time.
Yes, it's fantastic.
And, I love that you have a Marvel's number 4 in your background there.
Oh, I've got all sorts of crap. I mean, I try to rotate too. So I just did my review on Pit that dropped today, actually. So it's one of my members and mods, Chris Persia, which I'm sure you know, Chris. He asked me to kind of throw some thoughts and some images up on the original Pit run by Dale Keown. So that's up there.
That's great. Look, I love Chris Persia. He's a great man. He does so much for so much. Chris, you're the man, buddy.
He is one of the most generous individuals. I wish there was a way. I don't even know if I'll ever meet him in person, but if I do, I can't even thank him enough. I got that Spawn book because I'm enjoying the news. It's one of the few new books, CLOBBY, that I can actually tell you I actually enjoy. I actually look forward to reading the new Gunslinger Spawn or whatever, because I'm at least having fun like I did in the 90s. And the art is 90s art. It's not like all these magentas and pastels. And I got that one because it had a cool sketch cover, and somebody we know likes those, so it may end up in his collection at some point. So things like that are up there.
Okay, yeah. Chris likes that. Like I say, I'm old, man. I did not like a lot of the 90s. I didn't like some. I never was been a Spawn fan or anything like that.
I get it.
But that's because I'm old, and but I fully understand. at that point, I was dropping a lot of mainstream comics.
Sure.
But yes, it's very popular. I see you got some slab books back there.
Yeah, so I didn't do that until the pandemic either. It's kind of a weird thing because I was so adverse to doing it, because once you do it, you can't play with them anymore, right? And it's like, do I really want to do that? And I met a guy who was doing this through like investing and flipping. He's like, you're just kind of leaving money on the table because of the situation during the pandemic. So I did do that. I did actually broke into the PC and got some done and whatever, and kind of got the bug into like the display element of them all. Like, you know what I mean? So I can have my pit copy that I can read, but I can have my nice display one that's in a hard case that's preserved and stuff like that. So I kind of, and I've always had my finger in that, Clobby. As someone who did a store, speak a little bit to the fact that you have people that read them, people that collect them, and people that invest and flip them, and that there are different categories. And there's some people that have their finger in multiple pools, but a lot of times it's different. It's just a very interesting market that's different than others because of that, right?
Yes. Well, I got to tell you, for me personally, some of my dearest friends are collectors.
Yes.
Hardcore. I don't get to hang with them much. So, in fact, this past week we went. A lot of them are on the Gulf Coast. So we went to a show. We'll go like halfway when there's one halfway, and we'll get together and hang out that Saturday, which we did this week. And we went to one shop, by the way, which I love this. Tiny hole in the wall. We didn't know it was in that city. It was relatively new. Nothing but back issues and a few toys. Not one piece of new drivel, only back issues. Cool dude, and he had some good prices. And again, I just love the fact that you're going to see more and more comic shops now only selling back issues. But that's a side note. I've never necessarily been I collected what I wanted to keep and would weed out the rest. When I was in my own collecting, of course, most of the time I was bagging and boarding and selling in comic shops and stuff. But I got to tell you, for me personally, my boy 24/7, who's a good friend, a good dude, he cringes when I say this because he's a collector who likes to get bargains and stuff. But he does read comics. Comics are meant to be read and enjoyed. The art, the story, the characters. They are an art form. The paper and the format that they're printed on was just a circumstance of the time. And so, I don't even hate digital. I don't care if something's digital. I don't care if something's a hologram, for God's sake. If it's that original story, original art. Now, don't get me wrong. There's something so great about holding that comic.
Sure, like a physical book. I can't, reading a digital book is a different experience than when I have one physically in my hand and I'm flipping pages.
Absolutely.
Totally get it.
But as far as something being a reprint, I don't give a rat's. I mean, it's the comic and the story that matters. If I'm reading something, by the way, again, not that I don't want to have the original. That's cool. But I'm saying I love trades. I love omnibuses. I love this epic collections. Anything that perpetuates those classic comics and makes them readable for generations later, I'm game. I mean, I don't like, it's a pet peeve when they call them graphic novels at the store. They're trade paperbacks. Graphic novels are a specific thing made for a specific format. So it drives me nuts when I go into a Barnes and Noble when I go, it says graphic novel. That's not a graphic novel. But,
it's a trade
paperback.
I'm with
reprints.
You. Yep.
So I hate that, but that's a comic shop owner.
It's a term that evolved very strange. I wish we were both a little bit younger, because I'd love to have like, I'm not sure the physical store is the best place to do something like this, because I don't know about you, but I don't even want to dabble in so much of it. I almost want to just be the warehouse for the really good stuff. So when we meet someone who doesn't have it, we can just be an outlet to go, listen, I only want to make a buck or two just so I can buy the next thing. I just did we just comic talk this morning on the Old Man Logan story, which is just a great story. So I'm going to end up hearing from all these folks that don't have it or want to buy it or whatever. I just wish I had a cheap copy, a trade paperback to go, here you go. If you love it that much, hopefully you'll buy the originals, or maybe you can afford the originals, because we both love stuff. I mean, obviously you're Kirby dude, man. That stuff's expensive. Right. Not everybody can even afford that, especially if they're noobs, right? It's hard to introduce them. So I tell people, go track down your, the masterpiece collections, go get your omnibuses, listen, try it out. Make sure you love it. Find the stuff you love. Find your voice. Find your stuff. So, yeah.
Collecting is wonderful. I mean, I like to have stuff, but to me, the most important thing, again, is the story, the art, the characters, the ideas, the enjoyment of it. And in any way that, I mean, look, I don't like it sometimes when some of these collections redo and recolor stuff. And I mean, enhancing the colors, that's fine, because that would have been done if that technology had been available. Sometimes, but if they fiddle with stuff with some of the reprints, that aggravates me. But later, now they're not doing that as much. But they used to do that when. But people got to understand something. They've been comics have been reprinting since there have been regular new comics. There have been reprints. Marvel and DC have filled their comics with reprints to beat deadlines and all this other kind of stuff far before they were doing them in trade paperbacks.
Yeah,
so I have friends of mine who complain about reprints or not so much reprints. They complain about the trades,
these facsimile copies and stuff they're doing now.
I love those facsimiles. I think they're pretty cool. I mean, for $4 you get a complete reproduction in terms of the art and the ads and all that stuff of a classic comic. I think it's pretty cool. $4.
The only thing the only caveat I'd add to this is I want to make sure that the publishers make it clear of what's what, so people don't get duped into buying the wrong thing, or they don't get cheated. It does say
$3.99 on it.
Yeah, you just want people to, that's the only caveat, because you end up with people who are just new and generations that are behind us. They just won't know what some of those things are. But that's why we're important, because our channels will be full of all of these encyclopedic of information for folks like that to find. So,
well, there are people jacking up the prices on those facsimiles, even though, and not saying they're not trying to pass them off as the originals. They're just saying, this is tough one. This is now rare. The print run wasn't that low, jerkweeds. In fact, those sell better than most new comics.
I was going to say a lot of those facsimiles are selling well, and I got to be honest, I don't know the exact print runs, but print runs are so low now compared to what we're used to. It's insane. Like I'm shocked that you have regular mainstream titles that will be in the 10, 20,000 print run, and that's like almost going out of business levels for most comics, and yet that's kind of like the thing. So. So listen, I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole either. I want to go back around to Kirby. Why Kirby? Why Fantastic Four? What was the story behind not just loving it, but it become more of a reflection of your identity?
Well, meeting Jack Kirby, the 2 times I got to meet and spend time with him, were the 2 greatest geek experiences of my life, in 1986 and in 1990 for a young geek. But I guess backtracking on that a little bit, obviously, Batman was my first love, and of course, I'd seen Superman cartoons, but very early, and I was seeing those Fantastic Four cartoons, the Hanna-Barbera series of the 60s. And I don't know what, and of course, there was that Power Records, the Fantastic Four, The Way It Began, which was a reprint of Fantastic Four 126, was John Buscema retelling the first issue origin. So I'm not sure what it was. I've always felt like kind of a misfit, so I've always identified with my favorite superhero, the Ben Grimm, the ever-loving blue-eyed thing. He's my favorite. I just identified with him being a misfit, being an outcast, because of, I think, my experiences as a youngster in school when I was riding the short bus. I was going to the, as they used to call it, euphemistically. I was going to the special ed classes, and I had severe learning disabilities, still do really. But the one thing I could do is I learned how to read and teach myself how to read. I was really pretty much useless at all the other stuff with school. And then, because I was a geek, you always feel a little isolated like that. That's kind of why I'm related to him. So, but the FF, I love a lot of different ones. I love the Legion of Superheroes. I love, of course, all the Marvel and DC mainline heroes. I don't have a biased Marvel or DC. Because when I was discovering these characters on TV, I didn't know what a Marvel or a DC was. I just knew I loved them. So I'm not one of those who's biased toward one of the other companies, the big 2. So I guess, but the FF just will always be in my heart because of the thing, because of the family dynamic to them. And of course, Jack Kirby is without question the most potent creative force of the 20th century in all of art, not just comics, in my opinion. And I will back that up against anybody any day with factual information. His extraordinary imagination was unparalleled. He did all of the real creating and stuff, and he had a lot of credit taken from him. I won't go there with this show in here, but he got screwed over pretty bad by a lot of people, by a certain person, and yet he was not just a war hero who fought for his country and almost died for his country. He inspired generations of people. He revolutionized the art form of comics 3 different times, not 1, not 2, not 3, over his, I believe, 30 to 40 something year career.
Say 40 something years. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, anyone who sets the tone for an art form in 3 different generations and inspires so many people to want to create their own stuff, the way he did, all of his extraordinary ideas, his art. This is a man who's not only a brilliant cartoonist, he's number 2 or 3 on the all-time most produced comic book pages list after only Kurt Swan. Like over 19,000 comic book pages produced.
It's awesome.
It's not even, I mean, very few get even close to that. But he was just love the man, and he and his wonderful wife Roz were absolutely great to us. They treat you like it takes about 5 minutes and they're treating you like you're one of their grandkids or something. And I never forget spending the time I got to spend with him, especially the second time in 1990 in Atlanta, which was hours over the course of a couple different days. So
that's awesome.
I guess we're a little biased.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you were able to spend time with me. We get to know you a little bit better, talk to you a little bit more, that kind of thing, folks. Make sure if you're not already subscribed, check him out. Go through his library. So this is one of the creators where a lot of the questions you guys have for me or things like that, or you don't want to wait for me to get around and doing a video or answering your question, go through his. You go next to the about, you keep scrolling over. There's a little search button, type in some of the information there. He may even have the right kind of playlist or things put in there. Just know that when you've got, 600 shows on YouTube plus 700 other shows, you're not going to somebody who's fly by night. They know their stuff. And that's why it's so great to have him on with me. And there's no greater way to say thank you and close for you, buddy, is to give you a little clip. Now, I don't think I have sound because I always use it as like a bumper little clip, but here you go. There you go. So I use it like a little bumper clip when I was doing some video stuff before. So, but thank you, my friend, for doing this. Thanks for hanging out with me. All of you out there, thank you for watching and hanging with us so much. We appreciate you. This is Watch Your Story. Be blessed, folks. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you. Clobber on, everybody. Thank you.